My name is Roland Samuel. I'm going to say that in Igbo. Afambo Roland Samuel, album artist. Anyways, I don't know how to say that well. I'm not fluent in Igbo as much, but I'm an Igbo person. Both parents are Igbo, so there's no dilution whatsoever. I would say I'm a visual artist, and I work with mainly found objects. I work with discarded materials especially, and I know there was a time I was called collectors of rubbish. I work with found objects, and I'm also a musician, so that's all I can say about myself. Yeah. I would say I have other things to explore during my MFA program, and I was first considering exploring themes like dress cultures and stuff like that, because previously as an artist my work has really involved cultural themes, but going from a sudden shift towards marginalization, I feel plays towards a feeling I felt at the time, last year, to be precise, 2024, about the criticism of the Igbo people. And even though I am not present there, I felt very much attached to that culture back home. And I'm like, okay, you know what, I'm just gonna run with this team anyways, because I feel like there's not been justice done to that team of marginalization. There've been some talks on that team broadly in Nigeria. There've been some talks, there've been some conversation going on, like on social media, on the news outlet and stuff like that. But there's not really been a discussion. There's not been an artist role that fully speak towards this theme of marginalization. And at the time where I started seeing some social media criticism, I kind of felt like it's the best time for me to actually take up my role as an artist, to actually speak towards this theme and also create a body of works that actually address these problems that tackles our society. Yeah. Found objects, I feel they're like me. I feel like we are in a conversation, right? Because when I go to the junkyard to pick up found object, I feel like the object communicates well with me, and also I feel like I am that object. So working with found object to me feel like I'm working with myself. Feel like because I'm displaced in a way, because as an Igbo person, we have this kind of trend of migrating a lot, even within our country, because there's no sufficient resources back in the East to actually strive. So most Igbo people move towards the West, try to make ends meet. So I feel like this movement is kind of the same characteristics that I can find in found object. So I kind of identify with the object as myself more. So I feel like when I go to the junkyard to pick up found object, we're in sort of conversation with ourselves, and I am in the object and the object is in me, because the object might not want to be at that place at the time. So I feel like it's just me using myself in a way, yeah. So I think that's the connection that I share with found objects that I find very interesting. As an Igbo person, we often faced with criticism, a lot of criticism, a lot of, and as a child growing up, I didn't even grow up in the East. Like I wasn't part of that culture that I've been criticized for. And I think this is also the reason why I choose to go with the theme of marginalization, because as an Igbo child, I didn't find myself growing up with the culture of, I don't even speak Igbo that well. Like I try to introduce myself from the beginning, but I don't even speak Igbo that well. I'm not fluent. I'm more fluent in Yoruba, which is the western part that I grew up in. And if I just walk up to someone and I start having a conversation, the person wouldn't know I'm an Igbo person. The person would immediately think I'm a Yoruba person because the culture is in me. I schooled in the West, in Nigeria, but I am still being marginalized for being an Igbo person. So let's say I'm having a conversation with someone and we're speaking Yoruba together, and immediately the person knows that I'm an Igbo person. Immediately the conversation switches, and the conversation turns from like, oh, so you're Igbo and you speak Yoruba this well, and then, oh, you Igbo people are this and that. And, it feels like for me as an Igbo child, it's like a blanket, and I'm trying to like hide behind that curtain, you know what I mean? So that is the kind of experience that I have, growing up in, not just in my school, my high school, my primary school, the society where I work, that feeling of being alienated, in a way, once immediately identity comes out, that feeling of alienation comes into play. So I think that's the kind of feeling that I have growing up as a child, and that really shaped my experience, in this work. Yeah, that's what I'll say. I want to really address the work that it's not a political work. So I'm not trying to create a kind of protest, because I know how sensitive that can be and how that can create a kind of uproar, something. So I'm not making the work as a political art piece to actually speak to, for example, the government in power or something like that. That's not the aim of this piece. The aim is to present the problem in a formal way. This set of people, the Igbo people, which every Nigerian know is being marginalized, right? And to present this case, and then to look for a way to move forward, to move past, because in my research work, I talked about how the marginalization started from after the Civil War, right? Because before the Civil War, there was no such thing. So the takeaway from this whole thing is that it's not a political piece that speaks towards criticism or something like that, but it's actually an educational piece that it's a learning process that addresses this issue of marginalization and how, as an Igbo child, to give a voice to the Igbo people, and they're like, according to the AIGR, every average Igbo child feel marginalized. So I'm just trying to stand in that gap as an artist. So I think that's what I just want to really share about that. Yeah. The work itself, it's a learning process for me, because the work, I conducted a lot of research into the work, and each door panels serves as a learning process for myself. And I was talking about my Igbo child growing up, and I grew up in the West and those complications, but I don't know this culture that well. Like, my parents did not introduce me to that culture, because they migrated to the western parts, Lagos, for example, and they stayed their life in Lagos. They went back and forth to the east, but they didn't take us to the east as much. I've only been to the east like maybe 3 or 4 times my entire life. And I feel like in this work, I'm trying to connect more to that culture. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to look at this theme of marginalization. I'm being marginalized for this culture that I don't even know much about. So why don't I learn through this work? So in each door panels, I'm trying to learn, by learning into this culture, investigating like the marks of this culture, investigating like the motives of this culture. And as I work with the found object, it's a learning process for me. So I feel like what I want people to take away from this is that, learning about who you are can really, bring you out of that shell of not identifying or of being marginalized. So I think if you are being marginalized, for example, if I'm going to use an example out of context here, like the Palestinian people, for example, that has been marginalized, I think they have the identity. So I think what I want people to take away from this is that to own up to that identity, to not hide under the curtain like I have always done, growing up. I want people to come out of that shell and, speak towards that issue. So I think for me, that's the big part of that learning process. Yeah.